Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. I've been in a really negative place the last couple of days. Had a lot of negative emotions tied in with things that I really do not have any control over. I don't have control over these things. There's not a lot I can do to change them. It's a lot related to a lot of the news that we're hearing in the world today. There's a lot of negative news that, and not negative in a sense that people are spinning it that way, but negative in a sense that there's some bad stuff going on in the world right now, and it's gotten the best of me. I found myself doing what I typically do when I have negativity in my life, and trying to figure out how to run from it, how to get rid of it. One option that we have to exercise and be willing to exercise in recovery is that we don't run from those negative emotions and we let them be. There's sometimes it's appropriate to do something about your negative emotions, but there's also times where it's appropriate just to accept them. That's what happens sometimes, and you don't wallow in them, you don't dwell on them. You do what's right, and it's never right to do that. But it's really important for us to recognize that we're not always going to escape negative emotions just because we've recovered from drug and alcohol abuse. And I read something about this in Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart today by Mark Epstein. And he describes a situation with a friend of his who was doing meditation as part of his treatment of depression and treatment that he was going through after going through a tumultuous time in his life. And this is what he writes. The friend, he describes one pivotal moment in his meditation as a turning point. Terribly uncomfortable with the itchings, burnings, pressures, and pains of his practice, and unable to simply stay with the sensations, he remembers finally watching the entire crescendo of an itch, seeing it develop, crest, and disappear while not making any move to scratch it. He suddenly realized what his therapist it had meant when she counseled him to stay with his emotional state. And from that moment on, his depression began to lift. Rather than trying to strengthen his ego by eliminating his emptiness, my friend's therapist had done the reverse. By encouraging his capacity to stay with emptiness, she helped his ego become stronger. His feelings began to change only when he dropped the desire to change them. So, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of times where we have negative emotions where it's important to do something to lift ourselves out of the funk, especially when those negative emotions are caused by things that are within our control. But if I have negative emotions that are caused by doing something like seeing a lot of news that really touches me, that really bothers me, repeatedly hearing the same stories about things happening in the world that are making me feel this way, then I can do one of two things. I can either do something to help if that's a possibility, but if it's not, I can just allow these emotions to be, and I can do the next right thing, which usually involves doing something that has nothing to do with these emotions at all. And see, that's the piece that I was missing in my addiction. When I had any kind of emotional disturbance, I felt like my entire life had to revolve around it. And I felt like everything I had to do, everything I did had to revolve around whatever that disturbance was. And I've found in recovery that's not true. That's not true at all. I can feel an emotional disturbance and recognize the validity of that emotional disturbance. And then if there's nothing I can do about the situation, move on to doing something else. And yeah, I may not feel great the whole time I'm doing something else, but it's all about just letting that emotion be. And eventually, either it will go away on its own, or I might be presented with an opportunity to do something about it. Either way, I'm out of the game of simply obsessing about my negative emotions. And that's where I was for so long in my active addiction. And that's what got me in trouble. I obsessed about my negative emotions. I let my life revolve around them and didn't let them just be. I poked at them, and I felt like if I poked at my negative emotions and I tried to think them through and I tried to be rational about them and I tried to come up with some solution of, okay, well, here's why I feel this way. Here's what I can do to get out of it. If I tried to reason through my negative emotions, somehow I would be able to resolve them. And when that didn't work, I typically turned to drugs and alcohol to help with that. Instead, these days, it's important for me to just recognize that sometimes they're going to be there. And I think that's really critical for everybody who's entering recovery and who's in recovery to recognize, is that sometimes our negative emotions are just going to be there and we just need to let them be, and recognize it's a byproduct of the way that our brains work. Just let it be off to the side. Try not to let your negative emotions have an impact on what you do next in life, because rarely do my negative emotions really make a difference in what I do next. The thing I have to do after this video is to do a little editing on it and put it up on the web. And then I need to go down and get my son ready for school. And then I need to get myself ready for work. And then I need to start work. And then blah, 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 blah. And nowhere in there does deal with my negative emotions fit in. Like, that's not a task I need to do today. I need to do other things today. And so when I step back and look at it, it's like, I don't even need to deal with this. I can just let these negative emotions be, and like the person in the story, let that itch be. Don't try to scratch the itch. That just makes the itch worse. It may make it feel okay temporarily, but then it gets worse and worse, and then it gets inflamed, and the more you scratch that itch, the more problematic it becomes. Just let it be, let them crest, watch them dissipate, and in the meantime, keep doing the stuff that you need to do. Keep your eye on the next right thing that you need to do. That's the important thing. That's what we need to do to keep ourselves on the right path in recovery. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back here tomorrow with more.